Have you ever been in a restaurant and the waiter finally brings out your food, but there's a small problem? Like maybe you ordered it with no onions, but it has some onions on it, or you ordered a roll, but they brought you toast, but it's not that big a deal, so you don't send it back, you just deal with it. You pick off the onions, you eat the toast, even though you'd rather have a roll. Or have you ever been at a job that it wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't great? It was just kind of like, whatever, and it pays the bills. Or have you ever been in a relationship that it wasn't what you wish it would be, but it also wasn't awful, and so you just kind of stick it out, and then you end up staying at the job or in the relationship a lot longer than you probably should. Why do we do that? I mean, why do we so often need something terrible to happen before we take action? Let's talk about it. When I was in college, I worked with a guy named Kevin who was what you might call a highly functional alcoholic. And every Monday he would come into the office and tell us these stories about these unintentional adventures that he would go on over the weekend. And I remember one time he told us this story about a Saturday night he had had where he had drank way too much and he had been kicked out of this party, and so he decides to walk home. Luckily he wasn't driving home, but he was going to walk about the 2 miles that it took to get back to his duplex. And so he gets home, but it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and everybody's asleep. He doesn't have his keys, the door is locked, and he's just banging on the front door, but none of his roommates hear him. And so he's like, okay, how do I get in? And he gets the idea to go around to the back of the duplex and climb up the lattice to get to the balcony where he knows the sliding glass door is always unlocked. And so he's climbing up, very intoxicated, mind you, but he's climbing up and he gets to the very top of the balcony and he puts his hand up on the railing, and it's at this moment that he remembers, oh yeah, that's where, when we're cooking, this is where we always throw the grease out. And so there is a nice thick layer of grease on that railing at that particular spot, and as he grabs it, he immediately slips off, falls about 8-9 feet down, and lands flat on his back, hits the back of his head, probably has a concussion. And so as he's laying there, he's pondering life's great mysteries and just trying to think, okay, should I just sleep here on the grass and just figure it out in the morning? And he goes, no, I can just sleep in my car. That's a brilliant idea. So he works his way back up, bruised and battered, and he walks back to the front of the duplex where his car is. And when he gets there, he opens the back car door, takes off his shoes, tosses his shoes onto the floorboard, and then shuts the door, turns, opens the car door next to him, climbs in, shuts the door, lays down on the back seat, and falls asleep. Then, a few hours later, he wakes up, and he realizes he's moving. The car is in motion, and he's looking around, and he looks into the driver's seat, and he sees a woman that he's never met, never seen before, and he's not exactly sure what to do. And so he slowly leans forward and just kind of slides his head in between the two front seats, and he goes, hey.
Hey, what if... Hey!
And the woman loses her mind. Understandably so, and she starts freaking out, and she's cussing, and she's swerving all over the road, and she grabs her purse, and she's just like hitting him with it, and it's like, get in my car, and she's, just losing her mind because there's a stranger, apparently, who was asleep in the back seat of her car. Also, side note, I'm pretty sure she never got into her car again without checking the back seat. That'd just be my guess. But anyway, she pulls off to the side of the road because he's just yelling like, let me out, I just want to get out. And so she slams on her brakes, he opens the back door, jumps out, she speeds away, and he realizes that he's like 3 miles from home and he doesn't have any shoes and he just has to walk back to his duplex. And after he tells us this story, we're like, hey man, you need to probably get some help. Like, this is not normal, just regular old behavior. Like, this is not, hey, I enjoy having a couple drinks and going out to a party with some friends for a little bit, but I can handle things and my life is okay. Like, this is, you need some therapy, man. Like, I don't know what deep down dark stuff you got going on, but you probably need to see a counselor. Like, you need to find a program. But no, he didn't think so. He thought, I can handle my alcohol. I'm living my best life. I enjoy these unintended accidental adventures.
My problem? I don't know. I don't have a problem.
And unfortunately, it was going to take something terrible to happen before he was going to actually do anything about it. Now, I call this being comfortably uncomfortable, where things aren't quite right. They're not exactly what you wish they were. There's a certain amount of discomfort in your life, but it's not so bad that you actually do anything about it. But the scientific term for this is the RB paradox. No, not that RB. The region beta paradox. And this was discovered by a psychologist and Harvard professor named Daniel Gilbert. And he wrote about it in a paper called The Peculiar Longevity of Things Not So Bad, which is kind of the best way to put it. And it's basically the concept that the worse something is, the faster it gets dealt with. But when it's not so bad, and it's, fine, somewhere there in the middle, we just make excuses. We find ways or reasons to justify what's going on. And this is why when a relationship is fine, you just kind of stay with it probably for longer than you should. But if they cheat on you, then you get out. Or if you're at a job that's just paying the bills, it's not exactly why you get up out of bed in the morning, but it's bearable, then you wait until you get to a point where it's absolutely unbearable before you quit, before you go out and find something new to do.
I'm not paying you to do whatever it is you're doing out here.
Fine. So don't pay me.
Excuse me?
I quit. So you don't have to pay me. Now leave me alone.
And it's why so often when someone is dealing with a health issue, they wait too long to go to the doctor or to make some kind of lifestyle change. I mean, one of my favorite actors of all time is Jim Varney.
You ever any closer to Easy Street? And I'd have to change my zip code, know what I mean?
And he smoked cigarettes just constantly, one after another. And the day he found out that he had cancer, he stopped smoking. But it was too late. And he died not too long after that. And unfortunately, this is just how our brains work. And it's all of us. There's no one that's immune from this paradox. And so the question becomes, how do you overcome it when you're experiencing it? So here are 3 possible ways you can overcome that terrible no man's land of mediocrity, and instead of living a life that's just okay, that you actually live a life that you're proud of. The first way is hell yes or no. It's basically this idea that anytime you're in a situation or you have an opportunity come along, that when you're thinking about it, if it's not a hell yes, it's like, ooh, I really want to be part of this. I really want to do this. This is going to get me up out of bed in the morning. If it's not like that, then it should be no. So if you're at a job or you're working on a project and your thoughts aren't, hell yes, this is excellent. I'm really glad I get to do this. This is such a blessing. This is such a cool opportunity to be a part of this. If that's not what you're thinking, well, assess it, think through why not, but then maybe you need to start looking to go somewhere else, to find a different job, walk away from that project, do something else.
Give me a hell yeah!
However, there's a caveat with this, and it's that you're not allowed to quit on a bad day. You have to quit, you have to walk away, you have to do something different after a good day. Because a lot of times we walk away from things, we quit, we break up, whatever, on a day that things are terrible, when the worst of all things has happened, and then that can kind of cloud our judgment, and we're a lot of times acting more out of emotion than actually thinking things through. And so when you're having a really bad day, that's not the day to quit. The day to quit is when you've had a pretty good day and things are going well and you're looking around like, okay, this is not so bad, but like, is it a hell yes? Is this really what you want to keep doing with your life? If not, find a way out, or at least start taking steps to turn the situation into a hell yes. And that might mean some hard conversations. That might mean looking in the mirror and trying to figure some things out about yourself. It might mean counseling or therapy or doing something to help you kind of see things differently. But again, if it's not a hell yes, it should probably be a no.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so.
The second thing is to have someone in your life who will tell you the truth and that you'll listen. Someone who will see your blind spots and is willing to have the hard conversations to let you know what those are. Someone who can offer perspective and maybe some ideas on things you can do, and then you take that advice to heart. In the TV show Yellowstone, one of the main characters is named Beth, and it's kind of a running gag through a lot of the episodes that Beth hates her dining room, the dining room at her house, this house that she grew up in. This dining room table is just hell for her, and she never finishes a meal. That she'll start a meal, she'll eat a couple bites, but then she'll find a reason, find a way to kind of ruin dinner, ruin breakfast, and then leave the room. And there's this moment where she's talking about this experience, this kind of trauma that she's had because of this table. And excuse the language here, but I think it's a powerful scene worth watching.
What kind of childhood bullshit are you working out at the dinner table?
Yeah, that's what it is, Rip. It's the table. It's that whole fucking room. It's this stifling, oppressive, false fucking fantasy of a family that just does not exist.
If you don't like the room, then eat in a different room, at a different fucking table. I mean, look, there's a table right here. Why don't we eat right here? What do you say? Sweetie, life is plenty hard. You don't need to help it, you hear me?
You saying that I make life harder?
And we die. 15.
And lucky for Beth, the love of her life, a guy named Rip, has an idea that, hey, let's eat at a different table. And he offers a different perspective. And just think about how many years that Beth has endured this table that she hates and all of the baggage that goes with it. And with one little suggestion, everything changes. And so often that's just how it is. We get so laser focused that we can't see the full picture. And especially if we've gone through some trauma, if we're carrying some bags, we don't see things as they are. And we need people. We need someone in our lives that will just offer up some ideas, a different perspective, a different way to see the world. And then we listen. Then we try something else. We forge a new path. And a lot of times, good things happen. And the third thing is to think about what you're going to regret later. Really think about, like, if you're on your deathbed, hopefully many years from now, what are you going to look back on and regret? What are you going to wish you had done differently? And here are the top 5 regrets people have on their deathbeds, and maybe 1 or 2 of these will help you think about life a little bit differently. Number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, and not the life others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And number 5, I wish I had let myself be happier. One of the things that really hits me about those regrets that people have is how often the word courage comes up, and how often that people look back and just wish they had been braver when it came to living the life that they actually wanted. And something tells me that the majority of the people with these regrets were living in that region beta paradox, where life was fine, it was okay, but they never had the courage to actually break free from that, and nothing ever got bad enough where their brain crossed that threshold and made a change. So how can I not let that be me? And how can you not let that be you? And how can we use these ideas and use these regrets that so many people have had to put ourselves in a kind of a tougher place where your brain carries a little bit more emotion with it than it normally would? You know, if things are fine, if they're not that bad, but you can put yourself in a situation where you think that they're worse than they are, where you really start processing and thinking through the future. And okay, if I stay with this job another 5 years and I look back, I'm probably going to regret not starting a business or not trying that new artistic venture or whatever it is. If you can kind of feel the weight of that, feel the weight of that potential regret, you might be able to get your brain to cross that threshold necessary where it thinks, I got to do something different. I got to make a change.
It's time to make some changes for real.
But a lot of it really does come down to courage. So often we just deal with things, we just get over it, we just kind of let things stay the way they are because we're afraid. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of the what if. I mean, what if you quit your job and you get another one and you hate it? What if you leave a relationship and that really was the best you could ever do? We could go on endlessly about what if this or what if that. But personally, I would much rather say, oh well, than what if. I would much rather know for certain that something failed, that something didn't work out like I hoped, than to wonder, to be on my deathbed years later and have a regret that I never found out. And yeah, it's risky, but I think it's a bigger risk to not see for yourself. And something even scarier than that is looking inward and really thinking through, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? That's a tough thing, and it carries some risk as well. And if we're being honest, a lot of times we don't want to look into the deep, dark recesses of our souls, of our hearts, because we're not sure about what we'll find. But Carl Jung put it this way: that which you most need will be found where you least want to look. And to live the life you really want to live, you're going to have to go to those deep, dark places and light up the darkness, any means necessary. But what are your thoughts? What are some ways that you've experienced the region beta paradox, and how did you overcome it? Let me know in the comments. And if you didn't catch my last video on the decay effect, make sure you check that one out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.